All right, what's going on, everybody? What's going on? Eric, Eric Davis, I
What's
got
up,
with me
brother?
today. All is well,
What's
man.
going
All is
on?
well,
What's going
man.
on, man?
We can't complain. Eric, me and Eric over here talking about. We both showed up with quarter zips on, so it's some real.
Quarters and boys.
On a serious note, I'm excited to have Eric Davis with me today from Movement Mortgage. Eric has a ton of experience in the real estate industry. I let him talk up everything that he's done, both on the lending side, on the education side, just helping many people, especially Black and Brown people across the country looking to get into home ownership. With that being said, Eric, man, tell the people a little bit about yourself, man. Who is Eric Davis? Where are you from, and what are you doing at Movement, man?
Cool, man. Well, listen, Trev, first and foremost, man, I appreciate you having me on. Definitely an honor to be able, to share the same space, man. Love and value what you're doing, with the organization, with the business, man. It's definitely something that's needed. So definitely appreciate you having me on. For those that don't know me, I'm Eric Davis, branch leader with Movement Mortgage. I've been in the business almost a decade now. Had the honor and privilege of serving close to about 400 families now, with a focus on first-time home buyers, investors, vets. We're here to serve whoever is serious and passionate about home ownership. We like to put ourselves in the middle to kind of be that gap. Originally from New York, moved to the DMV in 2023. It's crazy to think I've been in the DMV for 12 years now. But it's become home for me. Love the DMV. Love how central it is. Love the diversity. Love the culture. You can kind of get different feels depending on what you're looking for. And I'm a big foodie, so my wife and I we enjoy being able to kind of hop around and get different cuisines and enjoy different cuisines. So yeah, man, that's a little bit about me.
I appreciate that, E. And for everyone just tuning in from wherever you're watching, right, whatever time of the day, whatever part of the country or world, the title of our conversation today is building wealth through home ownership, power partnership, right? So we're gonna hit on a lot of that theme today. As Eric and I just have a super organic conversation, like we picking up the phone and just talking to each other, right? And that is, what does home ownership look like, and why does it require a lot of partnerships? For anybody that's ever purchased, sold a home, made an investment decision, you don't do it alone, by no means, right? You can't be on all ends of the deal. So we'll go through a lot of that today. And especially with what we're building at founderblackagent.com, it is an ecosystem. It is an ecosystem. And so it makes a lot of sense for us to have preferred mortgage lenders, people who can help with the financing aspect. Nothing moves in this world without money. And so we want to make sure that we started these conversations early with having the people that understand the loan products, understand the do's, the don'ts, all that good stuff, so that you got your right team as you start to build up the 2026, 2027 real estate goals, right? So, with that being said, Eric, on that partnership point, right? What does it
Mhm.
look like for you, man? So, when people come into you, what does like a parent client look like if they're coming into your world, man? If like someone calls you 2 weeks from now and they say, Eric, I want to buy a home in 2026, what are some of those things that you're discussing with them in terms of what they should be preparing for, like just personally, and who they should have in their ecosystem?
Yeah, man, I think that's a great question. So, um, when clients get introduced, or even refer partners get introduced, I like to kind of have a true understanding of like where you are now and where you're trying to go. Right. I think too often in this business we just jump straight into um, like prescribing, right? Like what people should be doing without actually understanding where they are. So I always take the approach of like understand, all right, well, where are you today? What are you looking to achieve? So, from a client's perspective, we walk through kind of timelines, budgets, walk through payment desires, what their assets look like, as well as like their overall goal, right? I think talking to someone that is looking to purchase a property with the idea of making an investment after 1 year, that strategy is different than someone that is in their third home and they plan on this being their forever home, right? So I think you know too often we just kind of take a blanket approach with the home buying process, where my team and I, we really specialize, helping you create a strategy, because I think that's the one key factor, right, that help people really build longevity in wealth, right, in real estate, versus those who buy a property for the sake of buying it and then have that buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
So, we kind of walk through a plan. I'm taking the notes, helping, educating in the moment. And then after that, based off of the information that the consumer provides to me, we lay out a plan and we say, all right, based off of where you want to see your monthly, based off of your reserve, based on your timelines, as well as, your exit plan, these are the best options for you, right? And then we kind of, I put them up. I'm a nerd with it, so I kind of put it up. I put together a presentation for all my clients, and I say, "Hey, these are your options here. This is the option I probably would advise, but again,
Mhm.
these are the pros and cons. You let me know what makes the most sense for you and your family." And then from a partner or a business relationship standpoint, it's similar, right? So I sit down with all my referral partners and try to understand, hey, where it is that you are currently in your business compared to where you're trying to go, and then try to
Mhm.
help you identify the blind spots. I like to think of myself as not like a vendor partner, but more so like an extension to your business, right? So like when people come to you, right, I want them to feel like when you pass them off to me, they're still getting the same level of service, the same level of attention, care that you would give, Trav, right? So it's important to understand how you do business so that I can be able to kind of plug in and then also help you identify the blind spots in your business so that we're able to serve more families together.
Yeah, that's real. Especially I like that last piece you said a lot. Just understanding how everybody else on your team works. And that's what good professionals will always do, right? Like, imagine Eric is, handling your assets, making sure that, you're qualifying for X amount, or what you can get pre-approved for, what loan type meets your goals. And then, you have a realtor, right? But not all realtors are created equal. Not all loan officers are created equal. When I say that, it's exactly what Eric's alluding to. You've got different personality types, different communication types. And as a client, I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, is like behind the scenes, your team should be working and keeping you only in the loop on what you need to be kept in the loop, right? Everything else should be like cooks in the kitchen behind the scenes, just bringing out to you what that finished product is so that you can make a clear choice, because the home buying process is enough moving pieces in itself. So that's when we talk about the power of partnerships. Is a lot of the stuff should never even have to make it to the client, because you've got the people behind the scenes really doing that dirty work. Those are your lenders, those are your realtors, those are your title companies. Those are the people that make the world go round in the ecosystem of real estate. So I'm really glad you said that, man.
Yeah, man. It's a lot. It's a lot that goes into it, and I think especially because a good book of my business since I've started my career has been serving like first time home buyers. That
Uh,
there's so much that goes into it from an educational to a logistics standpoint. So I really pride myself in and have an amazing team where we're able to educate and empower, right? Because it's not most people look at it as like a one-time transaction, right? Where for us, it's like I want to be able to leave a lasting impact on people, right? So if I'm coming across a first generational home buyer and they're able to purchase a home, right, and they walk away with the knowledge and the know-how now they become a resource to their family and their friends, right? And then we kind of start like a triple effect, right? We get into one home, and then now, that first generational home buyer now, for their cousins, sisters, purchasing. And then
Yeah.
that's how we're able to change communities and be able to shrink the wealth gap, right? So I think we have, a unique and powerful position, being in the real estate space.
Hmm.
uh, I can't really speak for most, but I think, some of us take it for granted, the true opportunity that we have to be servants and to be able to kind of
Yeah.
educate and impact. Because the truth of the matter is, home ownership is still the cheapest entry of any ownership, right? It's the cheapest entry of owning. It's cheaper than owning a business, right? It's cheaper than like owning anything. And I think if you do it right, it could be the foundation, for financial freedom, for wealth building. So, again, like I love working with people like you know what I'm saying? Because you kind of share the same passion as I do. And it's like we don't look at this as like a job, right? Like this is like a calling. This is something is a gift that we get to be able to be, servants in this space.
Yeah, that's real. That's real, man. I remember the first time we spoke, and someone listening to this, it might apply to them as well. It kind of speaks to the fact of speak with professionals, get your own numbers because you may or may not be ready, right? What's going on in the world, what's going on in the news, what's going on 20 miles up the street in a different zip code may not be your own economy, right? It may be very different. Like Eric is from New York, very high priced area where home ownership may not be as realistic to everybody in this generation, right? I grew up in Northern Virginia,
Mhm.
also a pretty expensive area, definitely not New York, but has its own types of issues, right, in terms of affordability. And the reason I share
Mhm.
that is because when Eric and I first spoke, there's no operating in that blanket world will really just kind of cloud your decision making because maybe you're in an area, right? Maybe you've relocated for a job. Maybe there's something that now puts you in a position to get home ownership, but you don't know until you sit down and take that first step with at least speaking with an Eric Davis, getting your numbers tight and figuring out where you can go from there. So my next question to you is on that note, right? 2026, someone's thinking about purchasing a home. How soon should they be picking up the phone and making a call, right? If they want to buy a house in
Mhm.
March, should they be calling you in February? Should they be calling you in
Yesterday.
January? How soon in
Yes.
advance should they have a conversation?
I always say yes, like as soon as possible, right? So
Yeah.
regardless if the goal is a year from now, 6 months
Mhm.
from now, 30 days from now, right? I think the
Yeah.
moment that you decide, like you make a decision in your mind that you are interested in home ownership,
Mhm.
the sooner the better, right? I think the best thing you can really give yourself, the best gift you can give yourself in pursuit of homeownership is time and working with the right people to be able to provide you with the right strategy. I think the most common issue or complaint we see with people that have buyer's remorse, 9 times out of 10 is because they did it in a constricted time frame. So they're trying to, undo years of financial, missteps, right? Or they're trying to, race against a clock of an expiring lease, and it just makes everything stressful. If
Mhm.
you never really looked at your credit, or you never spoke with anyone about what it takes to purchase a home, and now you wait until you're 30 days out, it makes the process so much stressful. So I think the
Yeah.
best thing you can do is like get with someone to be able to get a strategy, know your numbers, and give yourself time.
Mhm.
Because again, truth of the matter is, I always have people that think they're like a year out. We get
Mhm.
on the call, we walk through their numbers, and they're like, "Oh, I could actually do this today if I want to." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's really just up to you." But I think understanding where you stand, like most things, right? Like in college, right? I'm sure we have a lot of people that they studied, they were studying from day one, and then you have some of us that was cramming, like myself, right? Like 3 days before the exam, right? I think the level of the outcome, it was different, right? And it resulted in the preparation. I think in home ownership and business, everything, the separation is in the preparation. So I think being able to get ahead and get a plan as early as possible is always the best thing to do, because then it highlights, okay, this is where I am. And then if there's a gap between where you want to be in regards to your purchase amount or your savings amount, then you can work out a plan. If it's, saving more, if it's paying down debt, so that you can free up some of your disposable income, right, to be able to go towards your mortgage payment. It's always better, right? I think having time on your hand is always better than racing against the clock on anything, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, that's real. I know that college analogy is gonna hit a lot of people. That hit home. It's real. It's like
Yeah,
you know
yeah, man.
go past that test, but what did you do to your stress levels? Did you end up even passing the class? You
Crazy.
may need an A on that test. But that I know that's gonna speak to a lot of people, man, because it's certain ways you want to go about doing things, and we know purchasing a home is the largest asset that 99% of people ever hold. So it's not something you want to approach with as an afterthought, right? So that's real. Next question for you is, over the last, call it 2 years, rates have
Mhm.
upticked comparatively to the COVID years, where they were historically low. What would you say to anyone that has been on the fence for the last 2 calendar years solely due to interest rates? What does that look like for some people who maybe purchase and just say, you know what, I'm gonna take what I can get right now with the rate, and then other people who may not even care about running their numbers because they're just waiting on rates to drop?
Yeah, man, I think that's a good one. What I would say is, I mean, it's similar to the market, right? Like you don't wait until stocks are performing at an all-time high to get into invest, right?
Mm,
Like the
yeah.
the goal is to be able to position yourself, like, to have time in the market. And the same thing applies to real estate. I think we do a terrible job at, like, trying to time the market, trying to compare, different historical runs, right? Like, everybody is waiting for the market to collapse and we have another 2008. But the truth of the matter is that's not coming back, right? It's we're we're well we're well positioned financially as a nation that
Mhm.
that it just won't happen. And then you add to the fact that the inventory levels are night and day during those times. In 08, 07, 08, we had way more inventory, almost double the amount of people that were actually in the market shopping for
Yeah.
properties. Where today, the truth of the matter is, like, because we've been in this higher interest rate environment, we've seen inventory pick up some. But the truth of the matter is, if I mean, rates drop by 1% tomorrow, that inventory it will be gone in like less than 30 days. So we're still not at a position where we have, a supply plus of inventory, to really keep pace with the demand.
Mhm.
So what I would say is, don't try to time the market, right? It's a dangerous game. Same way you would do it in the stock market, right? The same thing applies for real estate. What I tell
Mhm.
people is, the same way you would look at your investments in the market, right? I would hope so, from like a long term perspective, is the same way you look at real estate, right? Like you get in, you get your time in the market, and real estate is one of the few asset classes is always going to continue to appreciate. And
Yeah.
the simple reason is supply and demand, right? There's just not enough supply to meet the demand. So I think if you're able to purchase now,
Mhm.
this is when deals are being had, right? Like, especially during, like, the holiday seasons, things like that. Like, that's when people start to take their foot off the gas. This is when you lean in, you want to be able to get a good deal, and then you don't have to worry about competing in multiple offer situations because
Yeah.
everybody, I saw a statistic that 88% of the people that are active, like that are interested in the market, they plan on buying in 2026. So what
Mm,
does that mean? That means it's going to result in a crazier market than 2020 and 2021.
mhm.
So, if you're waiting now, right, a property that you could get, let's say for, 500,000, and you're able to get maybe 10,000 from the seller, right? In a highly competitive market, that same $500,000 home is now, let's say 550, right? Because there's multiple offer situation, and that seller's not willing to give you that same 10,000. Now you cost yourself about 60,000 in opportunity cost, right? And I think those are the things that people need to understand. It's not as just as simple as like rate. It's crazy that people only really pay
Yeah,
attention to interest rates when it comes to housing, but when it comes to credit cards, it comes to auto loans. It's like whatever that rate is, I'm gonna sign my life off on it. Like it's
yeah,
it's it's, it's really scary. But I would say is like, if the goal is to build wealth, right, and to get a good deals are getting had every day currently, right? Like this is the market you want to be in, because the moment rates drop by 1%, it's going to push another 3 million people back into the market. So that same $500,000 home that you're shopping for with no competition today, now you're going to be, having to spend 550, 560
mhm.
competing against 10 other offers, and then that's what's going to make the process extremely stressful, because now you're going over your budget and people think they're saving, in payment because of the rate, but now you're paying,
Yeah,
1% lower, but on $50,000 more on a home. Like it doesn't really make sense.
yeah. Nah, that breakdown is solid. It's solid because that's the details do matter. The details matter a lot, right? If it's someone who um did your homework and the numbers just still didn't check out to you, then that's one thing, right? But a lot of people, especially in our community, and we just say this because Eric and myself have worked with plenty of Black and Brown first time home buyers, and we know that bad news always spreads fastest, right? Or news that people make
Mm-hmm.
people be on defense. As Eric said, the rate is one part of the entire deal. It's a big part of the deal. Interest rates absolutely matter with anything, but it's one part of the deal. But there are certainly people that are getting good deals, buying homes that are going to appreciate in good areas and zip codes, putting it into their overall plan, right? As we talk about building wealth through home ownership and partnerships, right? The same way you'll work with a realtor, with a lender, this is where your good accountant comes in, right? This is somebody that's going to tell you that your largest deduction for most people under taxes is mortgage interest rate deductions, right? And during higher interest rate climates, these are the different pieces that you should have on your team so you're not operating out of just one lens, right? Because having multiple angles is always going to make you as smart as you should be, right? And the information that we have available today, there's no excuse, right? There's very little excuse, more than ever, to not look at all the different factors when making these big purchases. So I'm glad you broke that down. It's gonna be interesting to see how things look in 2026 with the changes and with the potential ups or downs and all that good stuff. So that sounds good.
I think professionally and personally, I think 2026 is going to be the craziest year we've seen in real estate. Crazier than 2021. That's my
Ooh,
that's my opinion. I mean, you have to think it like so many components that go into it, right? You have pent up demand, right? That
uh,
is at an all time high, right? We're almost at 30% on pent up demand. You have the largest amount of 18 to 30-year olds living at home, right? You have the millennials who are still one of the largest generations, but also one of the least home ownership generations. Everyone's crossed over that 30-year-old threshold, right?
yeah,
Statistics show that once people get to like that 32 to 36 range, that's when people get serious about life, right? People start getting married, start having kids, start buying homes. So you're talking about pent up demand is high.
Hmm.
You have people that's been on the fence or people that were in the market in 2020, 2021 that waited for those 2%, 3% to come back that never did, right?
Yeah.
You have people that are overstaying their welcome in their house, right? Like
Yeah.
families, they've been staying with their folks for so long, right? So those people have been working on their credits, working on savings, right? So you're pushing people, you're allowing people more time to really be able to put their best foot forward, and
Yeah.
everybody has the same thought in mind, right? When rates come down, I'm going to strike. And I
Yeah.
think us seeing those six and those sevens, it is starting to become a normality, right? Which, in the truth of the matter, is a 5 to 6% interest rate market. That's normal, right? I
Yeah.
think we got so we look at the 2 and the 3%
Hmm.
environment, and we hold on to that as as the standard, right? But that was really the exception. That's not the standard. Like 2 and 3%. If you look at historically over the last 30 years, right?
Hmm.
You see 2 and 3% two times, right?
Yep.
Like
Hmm.
fours, five, sixes, that's a normal market, you know? So when you add all of those components in, right? You have people that's been sitting on the sideline, you have pent up demand high, you have
Hmm.
people that are, well qualified, credit scores are the highest, savings, household incomes are the highest. When you add all of those things up, right? And the fact that people have been able to also educate themselves over this 2 year span,
Hmm.
the moment rates drop by 1%, once rates
Yeah.
get back to comfortably being like fours and fives, it's gonna
Hmm.
be a zoo, bro. Like
Yeah.
it's gonna be crazy. And everybody that had an opportunity to buy this year, they're gonna be kicking themselves because they're gonna have to pay again 10-15% premium on homes that they could have bought today with
Yep.
no competition, and would have had the ability to be able to negotiate, lowering their out-of-pocket investment. So I mean, I'm ready, bro. I think the industry definitely need a crazy busy 2026, because the last 2-3 years has been brutal for the business.
Yeah, that's real. That's real. Look, y'all listen, take notes because this isn't coming from someone who hasn't seen 400 plus home purchases, right? We're talking half of a thousand very soon, and the way 2020 is like, and this isn't someone who's new to the world of lending to real estate, um, and is doing it in competitive areas, right? So when we're speaking, this is Movement Mortgage is a national company, Find a Black Agent is a national company. So anything that we say on here, right? Again, we want you to take it, think about it, and then put it into action by at least starting to build your team, building your partnerships, building your team, reaching out to us to start to map out your own personal stars, your own personal journey, right? Because that may be, as Eric said, look, you're ready right now. You may want to move right now in Q1 while things are still a little bit slower, right? This isn't fear mongering, it's fear baiting. This is just natural. Real estate is very cyclical. And then things also do come into it where you're like, man, I wish I would have did that a year ago. We've all been there, right? With anything. And so, history has a fun way of teaching us how to be a little bit wiser. And the number one thing you can do again is just start to line up your team. As I look back at my own personal real estate journey, anytime I had those pieces together, I was able to move when good deals presented themselves, when that home popped up in that neighborhood. When I didn't have them team together, I didn't know who to call, what to execute on, what the loan product was, right? This is the time right now where you're studying and making sure you know exactly what needs to be done. Eric, one of my final questions for you is, as people, a lot of, especially first time home buyers, sometimes feel like my questions are very beginner. Should I be, what type of loan, what type of down payment? What would you say to the people who feel like, they got these very basic questions? How does you and your team help guide them through those very standard kind of step A, step B, step C type of decisions?
Yeah, man. I think there's no, I think we all have heard this at some point from one of our favorite teachers, right? Like, no question is a silly question. That's a real thing. Like, you're doing yourself a disservice by not asking whatever's on your mind, like whatever you have questions or concerns about. You're making one of the largest investments you may ever make, right? So
Yep.
to be doing it blindly, you're doing yourself a disservice. Furthermore, if you're working with someone that doesn't make you feel comfortable or confident to be able to ask those questions, then you're working with the wrong people, right? Because again, the same reason you would hire, a lawyer or your financial advisor is because you're leaning on their expertise, right? Their advice, their strategy. You're gaining their history of knowledge of moving in that space, right? So it's like, why not lean in and ask all the questions so that you feel confident about the decisions that you're making, right? Because again, this is not like it's not like buying a car. It's not like financing a motorcycle. Like, this is hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that you're going to be on a hook for. So you better ask all the questions. Like, I always encourage clients, like, we try to do a good job at like debunking, the basic questions that clients, ask around, down payment, loan types, things of that nature. And we do that strategically to be able to create space for other questions, right? Because I think, especially being a first time home buyer, you don't know what you don't know, right? So I think we take um, an advisement, a consultant approach to it,
Mhm.
where we're walking clients through the process, the numbers, the details, so that it again open up the space for them to feel comfortable asking other questions. And then from there, we just kind of built on that. But I've built a name, and really my business model has been on education and empowerment, right? Education and empowerment equals impact. Like, that's what I'm all about. Um, so there's no client of mine that should ever say they worked with me and they didn't walk away with some
Yeah.
form of knowledge or education that not only they could apply to home ownership, but to just financing as a whole, right? Because again, I believe home ownership is really just the foundation of finances. Like, you can't really say you want to be financially free or build generational wealth and not own a home. Like, I just don't think that's a real thing.
I agree with that. I agree with that. That it applies to it's just to nearly everybody, right? You got your outliers, but for most people, I was funny. I was texting with one of my mentees, and that term generational wealth is used a lot. The reality is home ownership will help you in many ways while you're here, but what it does for that next generation, even more so, right? There are people with paid off
Mhm.
mortgages out here. Their parents took out a 15 or 20 or 30-year mortgage. What would your life feel like, right? I'm speaking to the audience. How would your life feel if you lived in a free and clear house for 20 years of your life, right? If all you had was property taxes as a bill, right? That's going on out here, right? And so when we talk generational wealth, that's part of your plan is you're getting some benefits, you're getting equity. Maybe you stay in the home forever. Most people don't, right? Maybe you sell and move up to the next. But serious conversations around people that do pass on generational wealth, sometimes that does look like a home with a much more affordable payment, right? What is a $3,500 mortgage payment 20 years from now, right? With some increased property. These are the conversations that Eric and Trevor and myself and others in this industry, we get excited about because at the end of the day, those assets, we see what real estate continues to do in America, right? And it's not going backwards. That being said, as we close things out, as I think about some next steps from our side, if anybody is thinking about making a move, right, thinking about relocating, thinking about inheriting a property, had a conversation over the holidays, and you need to connect with a trusted, vetted Black agent anywhere in the country, go to findablackagent.com. We have a matching system. We're looking at how fast you're trying to move, what type of buyer or seller you are, what your type of communication style is. Make sure we're getting the right people in your corner, and we're with you every step of the way as well, so that you have a trusted resource and plenty of resources on our platform. So that's one part of your team. Eric, if someone wants to take some next steps with you and moving mortgage, man, what are some different things that they can do? How can they reach you, and just some next steps that you would advise them on?
Yeah, man. I'm a simple guy, man. Whatever's easy for you is easy for me. So if you're a talker, texter, you can reach me 410-240-8226. If you're an emailer, eric.davis@movementmortgage.com. I'm sorry, eric.davis@movement.com. If you're young and a millennial, right, big on social, you can follow me on IG, Eric, ERIC Davis, just like it sounds, no spaces or anything like that. Definitely would just love to connect, love to be a resource. Again, for me, I'm in sales, but I don't sell, right? I'm really just an advisor. It's really my job, regardless if your goal is to buy today, tomorrow, next year. I'll be in the business. Like I don't, I'm not going anywhere. But more importantly, I just want to be able to provide you with the resources and the knowledge, right? Because I know what home ownership has done for me personally, right, and my family, as well as I see it every day with my clients that take my advice, right, and now have multiple properties and that are retiring their, mothers and their fathers through the strategies we've created. So just get started. It doesn't matter if it's, $100,000 home or $1 million home. The name of the game is just stacking the board, right? Like I tell clients, Monopoly wasn't a game we just played because we wanted to play it for hours. That was a true example of what life is, right? You don't just live life to earn a paycheck, spend it on things that don't mean anything. The people that always was left at the end of the game was always the people that owned all the property. So go get yours.
Facts, facts. On that note, make sure y'all reach out. Make sure y'all stay in touch. Make sure y'all take at least one or two things. Share it with someone you know that's making a move. And the best way to continue to learn something is to teach it to others. So it doesn't stop here. Continue to just share it along. Eric, we appreciate you coming on, man, and just giving us the time and
Appreciate
the
you,
knowledge.
brother.
Definitely look forward to having more conversations, throughout the rest of the year in 2026 as well. So much appreciated, and talk soon.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, brother.